Okay, so welcome back to Shutes County Board of Commissioners meeting. This is extended deliberations from item number 9 this morning. And thanks for your flexibility, everyone. I think we'll go right back to it.
Sure. For the record, again, Tarek Rawlings, Senior Transportation Planner with the Community Development Department. We are coming back for extended deliberations on issue areas 5A through 8. 8A, I think it's just 8. It says 8A, but there is no 8B, so I believe that's the only one. So they're just beginning where we left off at 5A. That issue area reads, does the county accept and adopt as its own the applicant's updated EC analysis as appropriately documenting the economic, social, environmental, and energy consequences of allowing or prohibiting the conflicting uses on the subject properties? Just kind of back in the record, Commissioner Chang had initially voiced a type, maybe the beginning of a decision, basically saying no to the response of the board decision points and in the far right column, but we could pick up right from there if you would like. Just if you have any questions, just let us know.
Well, the original record had the Skidmore Consulting analysis. And what this did was actually take that and take it on to 40 pages worth of analysis. And as the last paragraph says, this exhaustive list provides a sufficient detail to consider the economic, social, environmental, and energy factors to balance in making this decision regarding the proposal and landscape management road goal 5 resource. That's the very last thing that they stated. It's exhausting. And I was doing like cross-referencing, is this what they told us before that we were looking at? And yes, it is, but it's way beyond. So.
After spending more time studying this in detail over lunch, I am still not satisfied with this product. It gives an exhaustive list of uses, but then it sort of lumps them all together and just keeps saying the same thing over and over again. When, for example, there are many places where we need to differentiate between these different uses and their impacts. But, saying that a concrete plant, doesn't use any more energy than any of these other industrial uses is grossly incorrect. I mean, and then somewhere else, I believe it was like on a pulp plant that said, oh, well, this actually uses a lot of energy. But a concrete or cement operation is a massive energy consumer. So I just feel like this was done kind of in a sloppy way. Like it wasn't done as thoroughly as I would want it to be done to actually differentiate between these different uses.
No.
So when I look at an EC, it's a tool. It's supposed to be input. It's a shame we don't have like multiple points of view creating it at this point, because this is an applicant's created document. And when you look at the positive and negative consequences and these different attributes, man, you could take it in a whole bunch of different ways. When I see pulp and paper, I think water. That's just a highly water intensive. Not that we would do that at this location, but anybody probably never be financially feasible. But it's water. It's not even probably energy as much. But it's just interesting.
But it didn't say
the different
it didn't
aspects.
address that during the environmental impacts portion. A pulp plant is a potentially very large water consumer.
Yeah.
I feel like this was done in a kind of like a cursory way.
Well, so then I would acknowledge, this is the applicant's point of view, not wanting to expand probably on some of those or not needing to. If there was a big community discussion about what should be in the EC, we could be studying it forever because there would always be difference of opinion. So getting back to the question, this is part of a application that I had concluded to support in the past And now this EC analysis is provided to us as part of this package. So the opponent, it does resolve the opponent's arguments. The opponent's arguments were referring to fails to comply by not analyzing of each conflicting use and inappropriately grouped uses. So it does resolve that. So I would conclude that I would support this as part of our work product, and there might even be some slight edits. I just noticed one typo in there anyway. So, as part of the final package, and we've done this in the past where, if there's specific words that need to be changed, we'll acknowledge it in front of everybody too. So I do support that
Very good.
EC.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I know when I was cross-referencing, at one point, it didn't say what it had said in the original, but yet then when you got to that appropriate spot, it did match, in the terminology we were given before. So anyway, 40 pages.
And just, so it sounds like there was still a continued no from Commissioner Chang, a yes to that answer from Commissioner DeBonne. I was maybe just a clear yes or no from you.
Yes.
Chair Dare. Okay, very clear. Thank you very much. All right, and moving past 5A, we'll move into 5B. This is related to the EC analysis again. So the question before the board is, does the applicant's updated EC analysis address the opponent's objection that conflicting uses were inappropriately grouped together? And it sounds,
Yeah, I kind of answered that for myself as my statements previously, but that does fit.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of what you had just
Yes.
deliberated on that answers this one. So without putting words in your mouth, though, it would be great to have some clarification maybe on this particular yes or no, just on the question, whether the conflicting uses are or are not inappropriately grouped together. It sounds like you had said that you believe they were inappropriately grouped together, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Well, yeah, so how do we answer in this question? So does the applicant updated analysis address the opponent's objections? The conflicted uses were inappropriately grouped together. So I say, yes, it addresses that. And were you going the other way on that, you were saying?
So if that's the question, then my answer is no.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, the right wording. Appreciate that.
What I just said, it's an exhaustive list. Might not like how it's all put together, but it is definitely exhaustive.
Well, yeah,
And with that, that's a yes from you then, Commissioner Dare. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Okay, very good. Thank you. So moving past 5B, we're on to matrix item 6A. This is kind of the large question again of about how to potentially permit these conflicting uses. So the question before the board is, does the board wish to allow in a limited way or prohibit conflicting uses under OAR 660-023-0040 subsection 5? And again, the applicant has recommended allowing fully, and the opponent has recommended prohibiting the uses. There's not a lot of analysis currently for the limiting option, or at least the most up-to-date recommendation from the applicant is for the allow fully. There's some analysis in the past for the limiting option, but they've pivoted to the allow fully.
so
And I'd be happy to frame the decision point question if that would help at all.
Sure.
Just in that, yeah, so how we've worded it is consistent with the applicant's testimony. Does the board find the conflicting uses should be allowed fully pursuant to subsection 5C of that OAR we referenced? And that's in line with the applicant's recommendation.
So going through the EC and expanding out the proposed possible.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. There was one, I just wanted to note, similar to the last issue area or a couple issue areas ago, Commissioner Chang has already weighed in on preferring a limiting option unless something has changed with your analysis, but that was also just noted from previously.
Yeah. And this is a big pivotal point.
Yeah.
But as I say, looking at the conflicting uses, the listed out uses, it talks about a couple of these things with no outside storage unless enclosed by set obscuring fencing, 45-foot height limits. So basically, and it was valuable going back and looking at this because this is rural. It's, our whole code package is built on rural. So this is rural industrial, change of use, but existing rural industrial from historical, we have these kind of the commercial service centers or whatever. I don't know if there's rural industrial there, but it put it in perspective, the fact that everything we do is rural. And so these conflicting uses, the ways they're written, it already says site obscuring fencing, excluding open outside storage. So it's already written kind of in the context of being, controlled for visual impacts. As I say, the height limit 45 feet also. So that, that's valuable to be able to see that and kind of think that through also. So allow conflicting uses fully. I could support that in knowing that there's the landscape management zone still for when you go in for a permit.
Very good. Thank you for that position.
And thank goodness we do have the landscape management zone. So I could say yes.
And Commissioner Chang, did you want to still go with the limiting option then? Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, we're moving on to, so because the majority of the board has answered yes to 6A, we actually would move down to matrix issue number 7A. Really 6B relates to limiting options, 6C as well. So we're down to 7A now, which is on page 9 of your decision matrix. So if this issue area reads, if the board elects to allow the conflicting uses fully, which they just have, additional findings are required pursuant to Oregon Administrative Rule 660-023-0040 subsection 5 subsection C. Does the EC analysis demonstrate that the conflicting use is of sufficient importance relative to the resource site? The board has, so just to the decision point column there, the board has answered yes answered affirmatively to matrix issue area 6A, allowing the uses fully. So with that in mind, does the board find consistent with the applicant's testimony that the EC analysis demonstrates that the conflicting uses are of sufficient importance relative to the resource site?
This is your weighing opportunity. Is your decision supported? Do you find that your decision is supported by the EC analysis, your decision to allow fully?
So as I say, a moment of clarity again, the fact that breaking out each one of those out and seeing that some of those already have words in them about site obscuring fence and no outdoor storage and height limits shows that does support the conclusion that I came to here. If that answers it.
And some things were already allowed, which was interesting in here. Even they were even allowed on like EFU, the dog kennel, perhaps. So I thought this was actually very helpful, worthwhile, and the depth was good.
And so just to clarify, would that be 2 yeses from Commissioners DeBonne and Adair on this particular issue area? Okay. And Commissioner Chang, happy to hear your thoughts.
No,
Sure. Okay.
6A,
Exactly. Just to keep everyone in the loop here. I appreciate the clarity. Okay, and that brings us to issue area 7B. And we are on the last page of the matrix today. So
I do want to make note because
Of
they
course.
just asked for extra 7 days in order to get that EC analysis done.
right,
Because I was wondering, gosh, what took us so long? But they had asked for 7 days more.
that's correct. That's one factor, sure.
One of the factors.
Yeah.
One of the many factors.
Yeah, if there's no other questions on 7A, be happy to move into.
Well, I guess, yeah. So 7A, and I'm still kind of digesting it. it was kind of my earlier comments, the fact that this, as a work product of the Board of Commissioners for a decision, it could be more robust. So I don't know where we would go with that, as in, it'd be interesting to have somebody, an opponent, review it and say, why don't you add this? Or could you add this? But I don't know that we're there, and I don't know if that's going to mess this up. But I mean, I could see that, that would really make it a vibrant discussion. As I say, I don't know. We don't need to go anywhere with it, but I'm just putting that on the verbal record of today's testimony.
I thought the video of the Highway 97, I thought that was really an excellent addition. And I would actually want to slow it down maybe. So, you could really see what's there.
Sure.
If that's possible.
It might, at this point, it would likely be their record to a
Right.
higher hearings body,
Yeah.
but that's a really good point to make in deliberations. I'm sure they're listening and might make that adjustment just so it's easier to see.
Okay, I just, I thought there's always the value of a picture.
Sure.
We're speeded up like we're driving 70. 'Cause that's what usually happens.
That's what they're doing. I mean, people are
Oh.
driving 75, so maybe speed it up.
Sure.
You're right.
Sounds like we might be finished with 7A discussion for now. So moving on to issue 7B. And this still relates to that same subsection of the OAR we were previously talking about. Continuing to stem from OAR 660-023-0040 subsection 5 subsection C. Does the EC analysis demonstrate why measures to protect the Goal 5 scenic view on the subject properties should not be provided? And you've weighed in on the adequacy of the EC analysis overall. This is more or less a nuanced thin slice of that larger issue,
That was a great.
to use a popular metaphor.
Gonna get out my mandolin.
And the,
In support of the logic path I'm on. So I would say yes at this point.
sure, very good, thank you. And really just, for the record, really the decision point kind of framed for the board is, does the board find consistent with the applicant's testimony that the EC analysis demonstrates why the measures to protect the Goal 5 scenic view on the subject property should not be provided as this allow fully option goes. So thank you, Commissioner DeBonne.
Yes.
No.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Chang. And thanks everybody for the patience with this overall process. It's been a big one. All right, and we are now at the last issue area here. Issue 8A or just 8. This is a large issue area as worded. So if the board decides to fully allow the conflicting uses, which we just did, OAR 660-023-0050 subsection 1 requires the county to adopt comprehensive plan provisions and land use regulations to implement the decision made pursuant to OAR 660-023-0040 subsection 5 in compliance with OAR 660-023-0050 subsection 1. Demonstrated by the applicant's consent to the subject properties continuing to be subject to the LM combining zone land use regulations because there are no proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan and the landscape management combining zone land use regulations before the board in the application. And I feel like we're gonna have to pull that apart a little bit here. So if there's any initial questions you might have as to how that was worded and what that means, we are here to discuss. But essentially it was that we start with the board's decision that you've already voted to allow the uses fully pursuant to that OAR provision. And so the question really is, consistent with the applicant's argument, does the board find that compliance with that subsection 0050 subsection 1 is already achieved because the applicant consented to the subject properties remaining in this LM combining zone? And that means that all that needs to that's required from the comprehensive plan provision and any kind of land use regulations are already in place through the LM zone and some of the other provisions you've discussed today.
So could an applicant say, I'd like to not be in this zone? Is that the flip side to this?
There's discussion in record that they have not requested that specifically, which
understood.
implies that they may have been able to request as part of some sort
Okay,
of zone.
so that's
change.
just, yeah.
But that was not part of this request, just like you noted.
Yeah, their last paragraph says they specifically consents to the subject properties remaining in the LM zone.
Right.
Well, so the whole mindset I have is that the LM zone is an overlay, it's existing, and it's a kind of a hard requirement. You don't ask to get out of it. So I don't know if we're answering that question or not, but that was my other
Yeah, it's
conclusion.
largely asking if those provisions, those protections that are already in place just through site zoning and things like that, will that achieve the compliance with that OAR provision? And it's kind of sounded like you were heading towards yes
Yeah,
on that
I
one,
would
but
say yes.
very good. Thank you, Commissioner DeBonne.
Maybe if they were not able to even analyze the impacts correctly and accurately, I don't think that they can achieve compliance.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Chang.
And I'll say yes.
Okay, thank you very much, commissioners. That's really helpful just for us to form some findings around. This is kind of a tight time frame as we talked about before, so we were gonna have to go over some scheduling really quick. There's a first reading and a second reading required as part of this process. Those are also required to be 2 weeks apart from each other. And so reflecting the overall approval and other deliberative points of the board, it sounds like the soonest we could come back with findings and materials for a first reading would be August 30th, Wednesday, August 30th. And then 2 weeks later on September 13th would be the second reading. That's our tentative schedule right now. That puts us exactly 1 day before this
Yeah.
September 14th, 120-day deadline. So this is really close, but we've been coordinating with the applicant on this timeline for a couple months now, and they're aware of how tight that is. But that just as laid out would comply with this 120-day timeline. And we're coordinating with the applicant right now on how those findings are going to look, basically coming back to you on first reading. But those are the dates that just would have, if you have any thoughts on those, or we don't have a ton of options, I will be frank, but those are kind of what we've tentatively lined out. That would be a working timeline.
Yeah, so I'll acknowledge that we will respond as we can and make sure we fit the timeline.
Great. And those dates sound tentatively fine. No big conflict, sounds like.
Okay, 13th is Wednesday, right?
That is a Wednesday. Yep.
September 13th. Okay. So we should be okay then, hopefully.
Yeah, and we've checked with board secretary. I don't think there's any huge conflicts or absences for those 2 dates, but that we're still just running this by you, full transparency and coordination. So
Yeah, so September 6th, I plan on not being here, but that's the one date.
and we'd been made aware of that. That was great. So yeah, so if that sounds okay, I think we'll see you back here on the 30th then in a couple of weeks.
So do you want to do some minutes motion? Because I know this happens sometimes. The media is like, well, did you pass it or not? Was it approved or not? So
Yeah.
Need a motion?
Yeah.
I'm just kind of
Yes, Stephanie Marshall, Assistant Legal Counsel. The board should consider making a motion and voting on a motion to approve.
yeah,
Yeah.
just let's do that then. So
I move to approve the remand of LBNW LLC plan amendment and zone change application 247-21-000-881-PA 882-ZC, and then it's referenced in parentheses 247-23-000398A. And for the plan amendment, zone change, remand. Approval.
I won't be voting to approve this application.
So I'll second it. Understood. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang.
No.
And chair votes yes. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thanks so much for your time today. And we'll see you on the 30th.
Anything else? Other items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two items. Peter, I don't know, Gutowski, Community Development Director, might have one item just to
Mhm.
provide a brief update
Okay.
to the board.
Yeah, thank you, Nick and Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Peter Gutowski, Community Development Director. I wanted to let you know that CDD wants to bring back an item for discussion and direction on August 30th, and it pertains to the Historic Landmarks Commission. We've had a robust recruitment process for months now. And we only have two candidates or two applications that have applied for 3 open positions. And I think, as you know, Tanya Saltzman's been before you. We're not getting the level of interest and really the level of activity that we've seen in years past pertaining to historic preservation in the rural county and as it relates to the City of Sisters. So quick refresher, Deschutes County is a certified local government grant. We have a Historic Landmarks Commission that provides guidance and technical input on historic preservation matters in the rural county and in the City of Sisters. There was a point in time when Deschutes County, as a Landmarks Commission, provided services to the cities of Redmond and Bend. This has been well over a decade now. They've detached themselves from our process and created their own historic landmarks commissions and their own ordinances. And in part, that's due to the fact that when you establish your own program, you're eligible for state funding. And every 18 months, you get approximately $10,000 to $12,000. We're at a point now, we've engaged Kelly Cannon Miller, the Deschutes Historical Society. We're at a point now where I think there needs to be a real honest conversation about whether we can really even proceed with the Landmarks Commission going forward. And we'll talk about that in more detail on the 30th. We have 3 vacancies, like I said, and we're just not seeing the level of interest and involvement. And so I just wanted to prep the board for this conversation. We've done everything we can with May Preservation Month, promoting these opportunities. We extended the recruitment, and it's difficult, honestly, to promote historic preservation in the rural area. Approximately, if you had asked the question, how many counties have a historic preservation program and operate as a certified local government? Of the 36 counties, Deschutes County being one of them, we might be one of 2 or 3 counties that has a program. So there's a reason why counties don't find themselves in historic preservation. We don't have historic districts that people can walk around. We don't necessarily have downtowns or neighborhoods that allow people that value historic preservation to access it and to see it from public rights of way. So it's going to be a difficult conversation. And I just wanted to prep the board for that. We have some ideas about, what we can do in the event that we receive a proposal for an alteration or a modification for a historic structure. We don't get very many of those. We haven't had one for approximately 10 years. And the ones that came through were in Sisters because there's a few historic structures that are in their downtown area. So just want to prep a conversation with the 3 of you that the conversation is going to get complicated, and maybe making some changes to our program that set it aside for a while. Of course, it's ultimately the board's call. I don't want to get ahead of that, but it's time to have a difficult conversation about what it means to have the Historic Landmarks Commission active as it pertains to rural Deschutes County issues.
Peter, remind me, how many times do they meet a year?
We've scaled it back. If we had right now we don't have a quorum.
Right.
We would typically meet quarterly. We haven't been meeting since we received the certified local government. Since we've had some resignations, I think we tried to have a meeting in May, and then there was a resignation, and all of a sudden we found ourselves not having a quorum.
Yeah, I mentioned it at the Historical Society board meeting, and a bunch of people are like, oh, that's interesting, but yeah, no response.
No response, and we want to be honest, and if for volunteers, you want them to be active and engaged, and you want to have a program, and we're struggling to have a program right now.
And Peter and I have talked about this, and it's not that we wouldn't have a program, it's that in a lot of local governments, the planning commission serves in that capacity if you're not able to find qualified or interested people. So again, Peter will bring back options for the board's consideration, but absent applicants, we can't staff the Landmarks Commission. And right now, for example, the Community Development Department would really experience significant challenges if you had a historic preservation application for an alteration we've had the canal designations, whatever the case may be. If you don't have a body that has a quorum, we're stuck. And so
We would be relying on some, as I look at Kim and Stephanie, some creative legal interpretations to get us the ability to provide that review. That's going to be one of the items that we'll talk about, is potentially amending our code so we don't have to get creative interpretations to the extent that something like that happens. And then we can talk about, what it means to have a historic landmarks commission today, but also what it means where it could be reconvened tomorrow. So anyway, didn't want to surprise you on an August 30th meeting of this topic. Just thought it would be helpful to debrief you ahead of time about what's.
Well, we just need some hot topic like the park out here, or when the Oddfellow cabins were going. I mean, there's always, something that'll bring them in, but we just don't even have that right now.
It's difficult. We don't have historic parks. We don't have we have historic districts on the National Register, which those are canals, but those were executed through the National Register of Historic Places. So it's complicated in a county like ours. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you.
I was going to say, and Oregon's complicated because I think it was the late 1990s or early 2000s that the state legislature changed the law. So now property owner consent is required to designate. And so there's not a lot of people are going to step forward and say, sure, please put more restrictions and regulations on my property and limit what I can do in the future with it. And so Oregon is quite unique in that regard.
And when we
So
first
that's another
established our program.
Yeah.
I don't think the county was forcing properties to become historic, but there
It happened,
wasn't that change in state law at the time. So Nick is exactly right that you need owner consent to have a historic structure or landmark. And we've promoted the program. We've done everything. We have a strategic plan, and we just haven't we're at a point now where we're just not for the lack of trying. And so Tanya Saltzman will come back on the 30th. She's our liaison and has interfaced with the Landmarks Commission. So I want to honor that responsibility for her. Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
I had the second item is to go back to the discussion we had earlier, the long-term visitor area, the LTVA. The question that staff that we have is if a majority of commissioners, a majority of the board wants staff to develop a concept of what a program could look like, we are available, we will do so. If a majority of commissioners are not interested, then obviously we will not. So it's just not clear to staff if there's a majority support for beginning this conversation, or if it just remains at this point with the chair and your proposal to your proposal at this point. So I just open that up for the board. I'm just seeking your direction whether we expend staff resources or not.
So we're calling a visitor area, but is this really for an area for homeless people? I mean, is that really what you're talking about? Or are you talking about a visitor area?
So I can talk about it a little bit here. So we're going to do Oasis Village, which is going to be tiny shelters. And we've done Veterans Village, which is tiny shelters. City of Bend has some other efforts going on. And there's also on top of that Oasis Village, the campground, a place for people, managed, low barrier, whatever it's going to be. I think a future path would be if we had a place that was a little even less structured, lower cost, minimal cost, a permit required, you have to sign a piece of paper to be there. If you're not going to break the law, you're going to follow some simple rules, and you're going to have trash collection available. That will give us a deterministic situation where we can ask people to not be on the land of the east side of Redmond, but also Redmond, the city council in Redmond can proceed with not having people live unsanctioned camping on the roads. So it would just be in the mix, and it's an idea at this point. So Nick's asking if we want to proceed and design the solution. And I'm a half a step before that myself right now. I want to kind of float the idea, make sure Redmond is on board with it. The mayor and I've sat side by side many times this summer, and it sounds like it resonates. So I don't see any negative on this. So as I say, my thought is just to, proceed as if, and it sounds like it triggers people because I'm talking as if we're going to do something. But the intention is to offer a place for people. We would put the rules around it. So you're asking a question, but you and I would put, the three of us would put rules around it. Is it a place for people, a place that you have to be, offered to be there, or can anybody show up there, or the parts and pieces of that. So I haven't put that down on paper yet. I mean, I could, and that's kind of what you're asking for, let's get down to a design.
There's a lot of stuff that we need to be researching. There's a lot of stuff that we need to be advancing forward if it's a viable idea. I am open to an objective analysis of this concept. If the staff wants to do that, that's great.
Well, that would be us putting.
But I don't, I would object to presuming that that there's one particular way to use the 45 acres. And that we should proceed as if it's going to happen. I would prefer for us to take that concept and flesh it out and rigorously analyze it. Assess the potential fatal flaws, of which I believe there are a number, and then make a decision.
We're talking the 45 or the 10.
45 that's unallocated,
Okay.
unspoken for. And remember, it's not even partitioned off or anything. I mean, it's just land that's out there.
Right.
It's just the bottom edge of the 130 acres we want to swap, and the top edge of the 12 acres we've committed to.
Right.
And then side by side.
Right. We did talk about doing something with that earlier when we were hoping to get people off the property that we want to swap with the state. So
the other thing is, Oasis Village, they're going to work on putting utilities across the road here in the next 2 months or so. Oasis Village can proceed here pretty soon. We just finished the contract with it, which means there'll be.
Very soon.
With that?
Must proceed very soon in order to be able to use the funds from the governor, from the state before they expire.
So then there'll be running water over there, excuse what I was going to say. So there's an infrastructure piece that's going to be showing up in that general vicinity. And it's not worked out yet, but at least there'll be something there. Why wait till next summer when maybe things could fall into place, kind of parallel this fall or in the winter. And as I say, I'm not taking it any farther than that. I'm just trying to look for opportunities for action.
no, I think it's great. I'm meeting today with Ed and Kat and Keith about Redmond. They wanted to meet with me before we have our churro meeting tomorrow. So
Great.
I'm going to do that. I know that those 45 acres, I want to see what they say because they definitely represent.
Yeah, no, that's
they
great. That's good
represent
feedback, 'cause that's what they'll
Redmond,
need too.
And I do not want the teeter-totter to just go down to Redmond, with everybody down there. But definitely, I feel that, it's an asset that we have that we can utilize. And, the sooner we do a study to utilize it, I think it's really important. But I would really like to talk to those people today
Well.
And I did talk to them Monday. I talked to Kat and Catherine Monday. I saw them Monday night, but we didn't really get to specifically talk about this. So I'm really happy you're bringing it up. I think it's good.
So remember, just a couple months ago, Christie, our property manager, is in front of us saying, yeah, we're not gonna be able to get to Redmond this summer because we have to deal with Juniper Ridge because we have a code enforcement case. So I'm still respecting that too. That's why I'm not coming in saying, stop everything you're doing. Let's go do this. I mean, I'm trying to respect the fact that there's step one and there's step two. Step one is Juniper Ridge at this point. But I want to prep for step two. That's my mindset.
Step 2A is to actually do a study and an analysis rather than presume that we're gonna do a specific thing and
Well-
and charge ahead with planning.
So now, I mean, think about, you're pushing my buttons by saying that. Do you intend on doing that?
I thought that was what you were just asking, whether we want to ask staff to do. Do we actually want to look at this objectively, or do we want to presume that like one use of those 45 acres is the right thing to do without any analysis and charge it?
Yeah, so we're just seeing the world differently. And we're truly just using different terms too. I mean, because I think our goals are the same, the objectives are the same. Action is out there somewhere. But by your saying, let's study the problem, really kind of pushes my buttons. And just I want to be very businesslike about this, but
Yeah,
we've known we had a problem for years, and this is serious business.
Businesses do business plans. They do fatal flaw analyses.
Yeah.
Before they go and expend a whole lot of resources. So if you want to be business-like, that's what we should do.
See, okay.
Could
Just amazing.
I just say something? Someone had suggested to me the other day that Reno had a really great plan and that we should really look at Reno. So I Googled it, and it ended up Reno had 100 people die in 1 year. I think it was in 21 or 22. They had 100 homeless die. So their count really, and I'm going like, so there's always like, when you have to analyze, like somebody really thought it was what they were doing was great. And then I looked at that and I went, well, we've got the winter coming on, and winters are 7 times more deadly, even though we're dealing with all the smoke and everything and the temperatures right now, but winter is really much more critical. So if we can do some kind of study, I'd love to talk to those people today.
Yeah. Oh,
Listen
no,
to
this is
what,
gonna be great. 'Cause
yeah, listen to
this-
what they're saying, and
what we just
because we
talked
all know we have a problem.
Yeah.
We know it's a huge problem, and we know that if we really have to get something accomplished. So thank you for bringing it up.
I have to say, I'm looking for common ground. It sounds like we've got a lot of common ground here. I'll leave it at that.
Can I say something? I need to.
Sounds great.
You guys all saw where St. Charles is talking about dropping Medicare Advantage, which in our community, Central Oregon covers the
Mhm,
27,000, 26,000 people. So I just had an email a minute ago from Dr. Divya Sharma, who's on Health Council with me, and I'm going to give her a call this afternoon. We're going to have a conversation about it, but I do have my hospital board authority meeting Friday morning at 8. So I've been telling people if
That's
they,
just once a year, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and normally it's in May, so it's
Yeah.
perfect. They didn't do it in May. It's it's this Friday. So I'm very delighted about that. But if anybody has any concerns in the community and they want to pass something on to me before Friday morning, please do so. I recognize somebody on our facilities review committee called me up after the meeting and said, oh my gosh, that is my insurance. I don't want to lose it. It's like an HMO with vision, dental, etc. And so many people in our community are dealing with so much financial stress at this moment, to compound it with their healthcare plan at this moment. It really feels incredibly unfortunate. So, working both sides of it, I did talk to Pacific Source yesterday. They're trying to get something accomplished, and there are other insurance companies involved too. I think if you read it, it's Humana. There are other, but they cover 15,000. So just if you have any feedback, please let me
Well,
know.
I mean, my first thought is, as the local public health authority, are we in the mix here at all? Because this is big. And I'm not expert in it, but Medicare Advantage and then dialing it back to Medicare, this is going to affect a lot of people. So maybe Nick, you can ask, Janice, I mean, is there any real domain for us here? Or is this, kind of state and federal law and not us as a local public health authority?
Well, it was interesting because Pacific Source came to me last week because I'm on the Health Council. And then I actually talked to St. Charles about it. So trying to get them together, if they would, communicate together, and maybe there is something better that can be done that's, that will make the plan better for both sides.
So as I say, I mean, maybe it's just an email to us explaining the lay of the land, and as I say, maybe it's not our domain at all, or maybe there's something we can be involved in.
But we definitely could facilitate. I've been trying to facilitate.
Yeah.
The good news is I did have a relative on the board for St. Charles. And he did call me back right immediately. So
Wonderful.
thank goodness.
On the
Thank-
St. Charles board.
Yes,
Yeah, I
he's
tried
the
to
vice
check on board
president.
members during
Well, he's the
early
vice-
in COVID, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody.
No, he's a vice president.
Oh.
So perhaps I'll see him Friday morning.
You want to talk to another insurer? I was talking with Cherie from Bancorp in Pine about this very matter yesterday. So she had some concerns. Bancorp is one of the entities that offers Medicare Advantage plans.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else?
All right.
None? Meeting adjourned.